Now we're going to go on to the part of the show where we give our NFC North predictions, and we're going to start from the best team in the NFC North last season to the worst team. So first up, the Green Bay Packers. Now the Packers finished 13-4 last season, and the big question mark with them this year is the wide receiver room going to hold them back? People have been saying Minnesota could be better than them this year. They lost Devontae Adams. Now you're looking at a core that Sammy Watkins is their best receiver. Alan Lazard, hopefully he breaks out. They drafted Christian Watson. Randall Cobb is still there. So it's not the void of talent, but it's definitely the void of great talent or established talent. So how do you feel about the Packers coming into the season?
I am definitely not low on them when it comes to the regular season. The Packers are going to be the Packers in the regular season like they've been over these last couple of years. But come playoff time, they're going to feel it. And I know that we're doing a predictions on the regular season, but when we're talking about the Packers, when you're talking about Aaron Rodgers, you're automatically going to associate them with the playoffs because I do believe they would be a playoff team. Spoiler, I do have them winning the division as well. But with a room of Alan Lazard, Sammy Watkins, and Christian Watson, who I am high on, I think Christian Watson's going to have a fine season, and it would not be a shock to me at all that Christian Watson finds himself as the wide receiver one in this wide receiver room. But the fact that this wide receiver room is as not experienced enough for my liking, and by experienced, I mean, I guess
Production.
experienced, thank you very much. The lack thereof production, where Sammy Watkins has had a couple fine seasons, but the Lizard King, shout out to the fantasy footballers, he's a week one shiner, right? He comes out week one, he's absolutely all world. Rest of the season, you can't expect that. Not nowhere near that type of production. And when he was on the Ravens, he was underwhelming. But ultimately, I do worry about this wide receiver core come playoff time. I don't think it'll impact them too much during the regular season. Their defense is going to be unbelievable this year. It could potentially be a top 5 defense in the league. And when you have Aaron Rodgers, especially during the regular season where he is... Him and Peyton Manning are the two regular season kings, in my opinion. I think when I think of the regular season, I think Peyton Manning's the greatest regular season quarterback that we will ever see. And then right after that is Aaron Rodgers. Coming off back-to-back MVPs, Aaron Rodgers, without a doubt, is still, at minimum, a top 4 quarterback in the NFL, at minimum. To get to it, though, with my record prediction, I actually have the Packers going 12-5. To go through it really quick. Week 1, I have them losing at Minnesota, and that's not indicative of how I believe Minnesota is going to be this season. Just I think Week 1 at Minnesota, I think Minnesota comes out with something to prove, and they lose that game. Have them beating Chicago. At Tampa Bay, I have them losing. Versus New England, I have them winning. Versus the Giants, I have them winning. Versus the Jets, I have them winning. Versus Washington, at Washington, I have them winning. At Buffalo, loss. At Detroit, loss. Versus Dallas, W. Versus Tennessee, W. At Philly, W. At Chicago, W. Bye week. Versus the Rams, I have them losing. At Miami, I have them winning. Versus Minnesota, I have them winning. Versus Detroit, I have them winning for a record of 12-5.
So originally the question was about the wide receiver core. Am I correct?
Correct.
So
Well, it's
just Packers in general.
but
I
it
know.
is a prediction of their
the
season.
topic list, yeah. Very famous topic list. The Packers wide receiver core, you have to be terrified, I think, if you're a Packers fan, because at this point, having a good regular season just isn't enough. We were talking in the Discord yesterday and to Joey about the Steelers, about how the last 10 years, they've been a good team in the regular season. They've won the division multiple times. Obviously, Mike Tomlin never under 500 record at any single season. But in the playoffs, the Steelers have 3 playoff wins in the last 10 years. I don't know the Packers off the top of my head. They have more than 3. I'm pretty positive about that. But at this point, it's not enough for the Packers to just be good in the regular season because I do have them win the division. It's only by 1 game between them and Minnesota. So I'm not 100% confident that it's going to be the Packers and they're going to be the 1 seed. But if you look at all the playoff teams from last year and you look at their wide receiver core compared to the Packers wide receiver core of this year, it stacks up against 2 teams, the Patriots and the Eagles. And those 2 teams got smoked in the first round, and it wasn't even close. All of the other teams, Titans with A.J. Brown, Chiefs, Tyreek, Kelsey, Bills, Stephon Diggs, Bengals, obviously Jamar T, Raiders with Waller and Renfro, Steelers, Deontay and Claypool. And then the NFC, you had the Bucks, who were without Godwin, but still had Mike Evans and obviously Tom Brady. Cowboys with Cooper and CeeDee. The Rams with Kupp and Odell before he got hurt. The Cardinals with D-Hop. 49ers with Kittle and Debo. All of these other teams have elite options at one or another, or at least a really good option like a Deontay Johnson, or even Devontae Smith clears everybody on the Packers, not even
100%.
close. So I think if you're a Packers fan,
Christian Watson.
you have to clears Christian Watson.
Don't get me going.
Clears
please.
Christian Watson.
Don't get me going.
You have to be worried if you're a Packers fans, but you have LaFleur, you have Rodgers, so I think that the regular season you'll be fine. I think Aaron Jones is due for a career year in terms of receiving game. He had 52 receptions last year. He might have 70 this season.
Great analysis. I forgot to mention that as well, but 100%.
And A.J. Dillon has to see an increase in workload as well if he's going to get Aaron Jones is going to get that much receiving work. I think A.J. Dillon will be utilized as well.
Another breakout year as well.
They're two best offensive options by far. But at the end, I have them at, what was the record? 11-6. What'd you have them?
I have them 12-5.
12 and
I'm
5?
interested in your losses.
The losses I actually do have them losing week 1 at Minnesota. I have at Tampa Bay as a loss,
Yep.
at Buffalo, at Philly, against the Rams.
At Philly. Okay, that's the only difference we have. Okay. I have them losing to Detroit also, so interesting.
Whoa.
Maybe I did my thing wrong.
You're very high in Detroit, so
Kind
it
of.
wouldn't shock me.
Very kind of. Very kind of. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you have 6 losses?
I have 11. Oh, did I just say 5? 1, 2, 3. Or I only have 5 on the schedule. I think, so kind of what I do with the schedule when I do these predictions, I go through and I give everyone their wins and losses. And then once I have that set, so I have them at 12-5, I kind of just, how do I feel about the team? I'm saying, like, do I really like this team? I'll give them, okay, like, because on every schedule, there's like 2 or 3 games that could go either way.
I'm fine with
So
that.
I gave them an extra loss. I'm at 11-6.
I can name you the 6 losses because I have 11-6 as well. They split with Minnesota. I think they sweep Chicago and Detroit. I really do. I know last year
Detroit.
Last year they didn't sweep Detroit, but that's because they didn't play their starters week 17, or week 18, whatever it is. You know how the NFL stuff goes.
Yeah, Rodgers played
and
like a half.
Jordan Love played. Jordan Love played that game. So Minnesota lost. Tampa Bay. I do have them losing to Buffalo. I have them losing to the Rams, which is 4. And then I think tough games for them is definitely Tennessee. I think that's a tough game. I think Dallas is a tough game.
Agreed.
And I think Miami's also a tough game. I don't think that's a slouch.
No, definitely not.
So those are 3 games that I think are toss-ups. And based on how Dallas is, I think Dallas can definitely beat them. They can shock them. And possibly Tennessee or Miami. I think they can definitely shock them. So those are the losses I have for them. But their schedule is relatively easy. Chicago, they're pushovers. New England is a much worse roster. Both New York teams, even though the Jets would be, I think, more competitive, they're still a very young team, and the Packers have a great defense.
Detroit lost twice?
Yeah, I do think so, yeah.
They're competitive.
Defense, yeah, I think, okay, and I can respect that fine. I think that Detroit, their offense is much better this season. However, to your guys' credit, Green Bay's defense is going to be elite this season.
Yeah.
And then Washington also, I think they can beat them. Philadelphia is definitely a toss-up
I'd be
game.
surprised if Washington.
I'm worried for when we do our our NFC East predictions because I have Washington losing a ton of matchups.
Yeah.
A ton. And maybe because their defense was very underwhelming last season, that's why I'm so low going into the season. But if they're healthy, who knows? Their secondary still is not good at all.
But yeah, the year before they had an elite defense.
They were amazing. That's why they're hard to project, especially with Carson Wentz coming in now. That offense should be a little bit better, but we're not talking about them.
Back too.
Yeah.
The reason why I would have the Packers beating the Eagles is because I'm still not sold on Jalen Hurts all the way. And one thing about the Packers is that
Agreed.
regardless of what you want to say about the wide receiver core, Robert Tonyan's coming back, who
Doesn't move me.
he might not move you. I don't think
not.
he pushes the needle crazy.
Not at all.
But he's
But
a reliable
he is
option for Rodgers.
somebody that should have been a Pro Bowler in 2020. He should have made it over Evan Ingram. That's a fact.
If
Without
your
a doubt.
competition is Evan Ingram,
Evan Ingram made the Pro Bowl though.
no, but
The tight end position is
It's
actually
weak.
good now, though.
now
It's good.
I would say 2-3 years ago,
So Robert Tonyan, I think he definitely helps them in
Like
that
that, bro.
that department.
the 2020 season, he had
And-
580 yards. Like he had 11 touchdowns.
Hey, come on. We get it.
I know, but
it's not a lot of yards, but 11 touchdowns is
I
impressive.
know, but tight ends could just get into touchdowns.
dude, when Mike Williams has 664 yards, I'm not impressed. But then I look at 10 touchdowns, and automatically you have to give him that respect.
Do you think Robert Tonyan gets 11 touchdowns?
Absolutely no way. Absolutely
That's
no
what
way.
I'm saying.
What I'm saying is that I think people are looking way too into the wide receiver thing because ultimately the Packers are still going to be able to move the ball. Matt LaFleur has shown that he's one of the better coaches in the league. Aaron Rodgers finds a way all the time, at least in a regular season. And in the playoffs, he doesn't play as bad as people would like to make it seem like. They lose.
He was poopy this last season.
He was.
Okay.
But
Well,
it
don't
was
get it
also,
confused. We're not
also
saying-
hard conditions. Well, okay, let me finish. They still had the 10th ranked offense last season. 13th ranked defense. They had a 32nd ranked special teams unit. Rich Bisaccia, who's a special teams head coach, he's a specialist. That
the Raiders
number's
head coach.
going up. The reason why the Packers lost in the playoffs was special teams. They got a punt blocked. It literally in their own
We
end
could
zone.
say they lost because of the special teams.
Well, that was a game breaking
Also,
play.
I don't disagree.
That shifted the momentum.
But you have Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
You have Devontae Adams. Aaron Jones, who had over 100 yards receiving
Well,
that game.
you're right. What I'm saying, though, is that the 49ers were not able to move the ball that game. The only reason they put those points up on the board was because of that blocked punt.
I don't disagree at all.
I don't know if they have a different punter, but they still have Mason Crosby, who's up
I'm
and
not
down
out
every
on
year.
him. I'm not out. I mean,
he has
Mason's-
years. He's great. He has
He's
years
really
bad.
good. Mason's still a really good kicker.
And we're talking about a Packers
Love
team
you
last
talking
year.
about kickers, man. I love it.
We're
Don't
talking
sleep.
about a Packers team last year who defensively were 13th ranked, 8th against the pass, and Jair Alexander did not
100%.
play
And
last year.
Darius Smith, another one.
So now you have Jair Alexander coming back, Eric Stokes second year,
Yep.
Rasul Douglas who jumped on the scene, and this 18th ranked defense against the run is going to be better because I mean their front seven is really really good. They drafted
Really
Quay
good.
Walker, linebacker, Devontae Wyatt, defensive lineman. So now your front seven is Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, Dean Lowry. They signed Jerron Reed, Rashawn Gary, who I think is going to
Beast.
have a breakout
Beast.
season. They still have Devondre Campbell. Now you add in Quay Walker.
Wish we got him.
This front seven is arguably one of the better ones in football, and their offensive line is healthy this year. You're getting David Bakhtiari back. Elton Jenkins is coming back because he missed most of the season this past season. So I think Green Bay is going to be a run-first team. Like you mentioned, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. They're a top 5 duo in terms of running backs in the NFL, and it really just depends on what type of version are you getting out of Sammy Watkins. Is he going to be a bit better? Is
He's
Alan
giving you
Lazard
700 yards.
Is he poised for a potential breakout?
He's also
You know-
you 700 yards.
Look, I think Alan Lazard is a good receiver. Is he a great one?
you're not
He's
hearing
not.
that out
A,
of my
he's
Is he
not.
better than Christian Kirk?
He can have a more productive season than him.
He's not
yes.
better than Christian Kirk.
I don't. I'm not.
As someone who's low on Christian Kirk, I would take.
I think Christian Kirk clears Alan Lazard. I'll
Easy.
be honest. He
Easy.
clears him.
I think Alan Lazard is gonna at least have 800 yards this year receiving.
Dude, listen, it's not the craziest thing to say given the opportunity he's
Yeah.
going to have.
And
800.
Christian Watson, to me,
He's a beast.
I'm very high
I'm
on
excited.
him.
I'm excited.
So it really depends on if these unproven receivers to this point can hopefully take that next step. But that's the only position group on the Packers that you look at and it's not good. But every other one, they have a top safety duo. They have a top cornerback room. So they have a top secondary room in football. Their linebacking core is really good, much improved from years past. They have one of the better defensive lines. They have one of the better running back committees. They have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, 2-time MVP back-to-back. And their offensive line is healthy. It could be a top 10 unit. And Robert Tonyan isn't a scrub. So this team is very good. If they make one midseason trade, like for example, back in 2019, the 49ers wide receiver room was very bad. They traded for Emmanuel Sanders midseason and were able to go on a Super Bowl run and make it. They lost to the Chiefs, but they were able to do that. There's a potential chance that the Packers are trading for a wide receiver midseason, and that pushes them over the top.
there are still
but-
wide receivers available on the free agent market too.
Julio.
How washed is Julio Jones that he's not signed right now? That's pretty upsetting to me. Given
And
the
it's
fact that
hamstrings,
given the fact that Julio's a legend of the game, it really is disappointing to see that he's not able to fully recover and get back on the field. And another name, Odell Beckham Jr. The fact that he's available and the fact that the Packers haven't been banging his
he
line.
can't play though. He's
Odell's
like-
gonna get signed in like October or something.
Yeah.
I don't think he gets signed because he's not gonna be in training camp.
Of course, no doubt. But you still need to make sure that no other team has
know.
you know what I'm saying? The
Yeah, but then
Packers
you also have to pay
especially-
him for a whole year, opposed to you pay him in October.
Okay,
Teams are gonna think of it like that.
I mean, for me, I have the Packers at 11-6 this year. I do have them winning the division.
Yep.
I have the Vikings right there,
Me too.
but it's just
right there.
it's not that
I'm
I
a game
have
behind him.
it's not that I have a lot of question marks about the Vikings. It's just that I trust Aaron Rodgers a lot. And in previous years past, when I've picked against the Packers, they have won.
Hasn't gone well.
And I just can't pick it one more time. I feel like I can't bet against Aaron Rodgers.
So we're all on the same page. They're going to be great in the regular season. We're both out on them in terms of playoffs.
I'm not completely out. Look, I think they can do something in the playoffs. The NFC
Really?
is weak.
First year, Joel is putting his chips into Green Bay's basket. So
I mean, I don't
Maybe.
look. I think they definitely need to make a midseason trade or a trade for an established wide receiver. But this defense can be a top 5 defense in the league.
Yep.
Agreed.
I mean, and that's Aaron Rodgers, when he's had that great of a defense, they have won.
Last year they had a great defense.
Not this good though.
No, I don't disagree.
It was 13th
But they had their
ranked.
guys healthy in the playoffs.
It was 13th ranked. Yeah, but Jair Alexander was still dealing with a shoulder injury.
There's always something, right?
Yeah, it is. Always
Everyone's
something.
going to get banged
It is.
up.
Yeah, no, but Jair was coming back
course,
fresh.
yeah.
I'm excited to talk about this next team.